This is not a spoiler-free review on my channel. Actually, a lot of movies reviews on my channel will not be spoiler-free, so this is your warning. This is your heads up on this. I just watched The Damned. It's directed by Theodore Paulson and it stars with Dustin Young, Joe Cole, and Louis Gribben. It's a movie about practically going insane. It's a supernatural horror film where it specifies one spirit demon essentially causing havoc on a village that is just trying to ration food. But there's been choices that were made in that movie that led into a giant snowball effect, which kind of elevated the horror. The first two halves of this movie was good, but the last half is where it started to lose me because it goes into the supernatural horror cliche, especially when it talks about topics of like demons, that these demons have absolute full power, full control. It warps the main character's reality and then nothing happens. Like a great notable movie from last year that did that was Smile 2, but Smile 2 did it in a way where it just made sense. However, in this movie, it just didn't feel like it needed it. I almost wish this movie ended with like it was all just a dream because they're just starving and starving goes crazy. That would have genuinely be a better ending. Although I do think this movie is worth a watch, but only on one watch. Things that I really liked about the movie is the cinematography. It was very beautiful. Also, the editing really elevated the suspense, and we'll get into the horror of it because the horror was deeply unsettling. I also love the soundtrack of this movie because a lot of scary soundtracks have a tendency to sound the same, just like loud noises, and it just doesn't sound beautiful. However, in this movie, the horror, when it got scary, sounded beautiful. It sounded chaotic. It's really hard to achieve that in a horror film when it's so easy to manufacture like a deep bass noise or just like a jump scare of like strings or whatever. Also, the acting, a lot of people might have a little bit of might have a bit of a gripe with the acting. However, I think the problem lies in the direction because I think the actors, what they were given, they really knocked it out of the park. I was absorbed into their story, which is hugely important. Whenever you go see a movie, you want to be absorbed into the story, and I got in that moment. However, I was taken out a few times because of different choices of where the camera is and like the direction of it. There was like one scene where the main girl, Odessa, was talking to like one of her crewmates and or like village people, and he was just like talking and like kind of explaining the lore of this demon and like its powers and how to get rid of it. I kid you not, there was a 5-second shot of her just staring at him, and it was just like, is she gonna say anything? She literally looked like this, like I'm not even joking. It felt so awkward. But some more good things about this movie is the horror. The first two halves of this movie are insane. I like to break my movies up into thirds, so part 1 and part 2, absolute peak. I am a sucker for slow burns. I don't need all those jump scares. When I see a scary movie, I want to be traumatized. And if you fail to traumatize me, well, then you're not a scary movie, you're just a failure. So one of my favorite horror sequences was with the main girl. Keep in mind that if you haven't seen this movie, this demon has powers in terms of like nighttime and sleep, and it likes to really psychologically mess with people. So there's a lot of psychological horror. And one of the scenes, after she falls asleep the first time, it was actually the second time she falls asleep, she wakes up and like hears like some really creepy sound design, and she's just like looking around and unsure, and us as the viewers, we're just as unsure as her until she looks on her bed and sees a hand. It scared me so bad, but here's the catch. There was no music, no sound at all. Just seeing the hand, it makes your heart sink. And I vividly remember the audience like freaking out. I had like an audience of like maybe 6 people, and they were all freaking out. Like, this movie was really getting to them. So a lot of the horror sequences make you feel hopeless until the ending. Let's break down this ending. This is by far one of the worst endings I have seen in horror, in a long time. Why is it always in supernatural horror, the psychosis, the you never stood a chance? Why is it always that way? Like, I go into these movies now knowing that these main characters or just these characters never stood a chance in the first place. It's a story where you're just a victim the entire time. And it's not a pleasant experience. You don't go to these movies for a fun time. And one thing that just gets under my skin every single time with horror is these characters never win because, oh, it's horror. It's always supposed to show the worst. In The Damned, it's just, you just see it coming. Yeah. So with all of that being said, I rate this movie 2.5 stars out of 5 because it has some solid moments. I think the editing is really good. I think the acting's good. I think the color grading is amazing. The dialogue was really well done. The sequences, the action sequences were awesome, terrifying even. But it's just the writing. That was the one flaw in this movie. And if it just maybe did a different ending, I think this movie would have been a lot better. But, however, I think this is a really solid entry into 2025, and I think it's a great first movie for 2025, because a lot of January movies are really not that good. So, if you did like The Damned, I recommend you watch a TV show called The Terror. And I think The Terror outdoes The Damned by a long shot. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in my next movie review. I'll see you then.